Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special occasion. We have one of the finest concept artists in the world right now sitting here on this sofa, Dijk von Bungie. Cheers,
Hi.
Jesse. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So actually, before you introduce yourself, let me first say these words. You create worlds that nobody has seen before and nobody has played before. You're the lead concept artist at Bungie and you're responsible for those guys. Mainly for those guys, right?
In part, sure, yeah.
In part, sure. Would you like to add this information about your person, please?
So essentially what the responsibility of my team is certainly to do the production designs for all visual components of the game. To another extent, some of the things we also spend a lot of time working on is to make sure that very early on we allow for certain ideas that exist within the studio to be talked about by pre-visualizing them.
Right.
Because of the fact that our team is almost entirely disconnected in a technical sense from the actual engine and the constraints that come from a production environment. It is relatively easy for us to propose certain ideas that might be very sort of complicated to execute on, but it's precisely for that reason that my team does that, because really sort of we're only limited by our own imaginations, and so it is important for us to really think outside the box and not worry so much about what is easier to do than other things. It's like we think primarily about the player experience and what is an awesome thing to do for players, and then we visualize that, we talk about it, and so we basically facilitate the production process, the production of those ideas, and some of them make it into the game, some of them don't, but that is essentially what our job comes down to.
All right. So actually, we started right ahead, right? Dude. So as I mentioned before, you're the lead concept artist, right?
Yes.
Before we head out and just ask the question, what is your job, right?
Sure.
So how is your daily work is looking like? Because I think many people from the audience, and as well from the whole gamer community, they don't really have the chance to understand what's with your job actually at this huge, really brilliant company like Bungie, right? So I don't have to mention that they did Halo, the whole Halo franchise as well. But now with Destiny, they have a total new approach, right? So, but back to you personally. So you start in the game industry about 2006, if it's correct.
Maybe a little before that, actually.
Right?
I think I got my first job in 2004, so a little bit earlier.
All right,
Yep.
2004. But you graduated as a master in industrial design in Delft, the Technical University in Delft in the Netherlands, right?
Yep.
All right. And I just read a really interesting interview that you said that you never touched kind of a computer before you worked in the gaming industry for that purpose to create kind of virtual worlds. Is that correct?
Well, it's not entirely correct. I think sort of what that comment came down to is that I actually never did sort of concept art strictly in the strict sense before I actually became a concept artist, ironically enough. Like what I had done to sort of get my first job in the games industry is basically create levels for games.
Okay.
I worked on Doom and Quake sort of on my own
really?
at home, and that was why I sort of got excited about basically game development. It was essentially the opportunity to imagine a space and then build it and allow other people to walk through that space that you just imagined, and that was really exciting for me. And when I got my job, it was basically at the point in time where the discipline of creating those spaces split off into two sort of sub-disciplines, one of which was concept art and the other of which was the world art component of it, which amounts to the actual technical execution on the idea of making those spaces within the game engine. I rolled out of school and I became formally I became a level designer, but in reality it was actually being a concept artist.
All right. So concept artist, the job is to create worlds, right? But always having in mind people will run through those worlds. Okay, so we just have a look at, actually the latest trailer from The Taken King. So this is the next level of Destiny. So Destiny has been out for I think it's a year ago.
Yes.
Kind of, right?
Yep.
And on the 15th of September, there will be the new kind of big bang for the Destiny community, right?
Yes.
So, and your job, just to really kind of start at the first point, your job is you sit down there with your team and you create this. Is that correct? You kind of visualize the idea. All right, Destiny is some when 2700, right? So in the apocalyptic future, how does it look like? Is that your job? Is that?
Well, I mean, to a certain degree it is, but it's important to stress that you know, we're certainly not the only ones that pitch certain ideas. What we do more than anything is facilitate the idea generation. So if someone has a good idea, whether that's someone in our team or someone else, then we make sure that those ideas are allowed to come to fruition by, you know, supporting them visually in a very early stage, like just plotting it out. The thing is with you know, with a production environment that is as sort of complex and large as the one that is working on Destiny, it is really important, especially in the early phases, that, you know, people from all kinds of different disciplines talk to each other and have some shared understanding of, like, hey, this is the kind of experience we all have in mind that we want to build, and that is something that we facilitate. I mean, later on, as you know, these ideas become more defined, then absolutely at some point we get into the nitty-gritty of, like, what does every single bolt look like.
I guess
that too, and you know, we spend a lot of time working on those production designs, but certainly early on, that's when we really sort of sit down and we come up with mood paintings and things like that.
All right.
But those will almost always be a shared effort between us and, you know, the sort of the creative leads and everybody else who is involved. Really.
Yeah. So this is the question from our community to you is, all right, from your kind of work, from your visions, right, from your concept artist work, how does it work? So you sit down in a, I guess, smaller team first, right? And then you talk about certain things. How should it look like? How should it work? What steps do you need to take to finally get the players to run through that corridors, through the maps, through the walls?
Well, I mean, it starts off by really sort of thinking about what we want the final experience to be like. That is almost always where it starts. We don't necessarily think of new spaces just for the sake of new space. We always approach things from a player's perspective, because ultimately the most important thing, the most critical sort of evaluation for whether or not we've succeeded is to ask ourselves the question, is this going to be fun to play? Right? That's the most important thing. It is not whether it looks pretty or not. It should always be fun, first and foremost. And basically you extrapolate from there on out. Fun is a very sort of nebulous quality to describe. It is hard to tell whether or not something is going to be fun. So what we do then is we start to define, okay, so what is it actually we want to accomplish? What kind of experience are we trying to build here? And then from there on out, you start to really, you know, eliminate as much unnecessary information as you can. And when it comes to designing spaces, for example,
just like this, for instance, right?
Just like this, it is making sure that, you know, players will have an understanding, where can I go? Like, you know, what are the things I should be paying attention to? And that is a process that we direct carefully, because, you know, if we don't, players are going to become confused. They're not going to sure where they need to go, or like what pieces of gear are important, or, you know, what the critical spot on a combatant is, for example. It can be any of those things, but that visual language needs to be clear. And if it's not, players are going to get confused and they'll be bored.
Really, just, you know, just look at the stuff. I was really impressed. I am impressed. So actually, to be honest, I'm just a level 22 character. Okay. So that's not cool. I know I'm a warlock, and I need to get into the game. And I'm not telling this because you're sitting here, because I like the experience, and my way of playing video games is I just want to hop in. And the first thing is what I do is I try every camera angle that's possible. I focus on each corner to see, all right, have you guys, you know, checked this corner or not, right? Yeah. So, and this is what I really love. But, you know, especially in Destiny, so you get the planet structures, right? So, and we have certain screenshots of the moon. So my first thing when I got to play Destiny, and my first second on the moon, I was really blasted away. You know, it could be a bit bigger for myself, from my personal point of view, right? But that was impressive, right? And how do you come up with those ideas, right? So you got the Destiny setting, it's 2,700 somewhere, right? You got the traveler, you got kind of a backstory which hasn't been rolled out at that point of the game, right?
Yeah.
How do you try to get this, especially the moon as an example? What was your approach to build up the moon then, right? So at any point of time, somebody came up to create the moon for us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, specifically with the moon.
I'm sorry, this is another example. We just leave it here. Let's
Sure.
Sorry.
I mean, so we always even sort of before we did our first, concept sketches for Destiny as an IP, we always wanted it to revolve around you exploring the solar system, and we wanted to ultimately offer players the chance to go to all these exotic places within our solar system, and we started working on that immediately. But we instantly felt that Earth was going to be a special place because it's our home, it's familiar, right? It's sort of the closest thing to us. And in that sense, the moon was a very interesting case because, on one hand, it's out there, right? You need spacecraft to get to it. At the same time, if you look at the scope of our entire solar system, it definitely has sort of more of a homey feeling than some of the other places. And so we really, that was sort of the feeling that we started off with. Like, it was going to sort of always have that sort of special place for us. And so we really figured, like, what can we do here to, what can we do in terms of like decorating it with infrastructure that is going to be somewhat familiar to players, but not immediately what they think of when you Google for like moon landing pictures. Yeah. So we set up a lot of time. We built a huge Chinese moon base there, right? Because we love the idea that at some point the Chinese would set up have a much more prominent presence on the moon there than
could
the
be
US.
kind of realistic, right? So maybe
Yeah,
we don't know
exactly.
yet, actually. So
you don't know.
Nobody knows it.
Exactly. and that is exactly sort of the kind of thing that we think about. Like, is it plausible? Yeah, a little bit. Is it exactly like what sort of you would expect to see, sort of based on the current day state of affairs? Not necessarily immediately, but that's exactly the kind of thing we try to shoot for. It's a little bit of sort of a little bit of grounded in reality, but certainly absolutely also fantastical to a certain degree.
So talking about the moon, right? The story from Destiny, many players, when Destiny started out, the story was always this mystical thing. Nobody really understood what's going to happen, right? Well, I personally get the idea that the story is something that really spreads out over years.
Yeah.
So, and colleagues from Bungie, they try to explain this, okay? But especially coming back to the moon, right? So the story states that something came out of the moon, okay, to attack something, right? You as the leader of concept art, right? So somebody comes over to you and say, all right, this is a kind of a storyline. Do you know the whole story from Destiny to work on your? You don't have to tell anything, but in which kind of part do you know the storyline from Destiny?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Pertaining to the moon specifically, I'll actually sort of describe a little bit how that process actually works. Like the way we like to tell stories in Destiny is very much in a layered sense. Like there will be sort of the player-facing side of it, which is the portion of which is elaborated through like dialogue or other means. We spend a lot of time making sure that for players who look for it, there's information there in the way certain elements of the world are orchestrated and organized and hidden for players who search for those kinds of things. That's a process that happens very gradually over time. Of course, none of that is there when you first start, laying out the terrain, because initially what you concern yourself with first and foremost is like, how is navigating the space going to work? Where are our major set pieces going to be? And then, but like from there on, as sort of the place, the location starts to develop, all of these tiny, smaller pieces are falling into place. And as far as the fiction for the moon was concerned, and especially when it comes to our participation in it, the moon is a great example of a location that contains a central element that we want to be evocative, that raises certain questions, which is the hellmouth, right? It's this chasm in the ground. Well, what we like is the idea that players first enter that space and they see that thing and they question, they're automatically asking themselves the question, what happened here? Why is there this pit in the ground, and where does it lead to? And especially because we didn't initially offer players a chance to actually do that. That took some time. We certainly like to think that that feeds people's curiosity, and we love to satisfy that, like to sort of at some point say, like this is the moment where we open the doors and we answer some of those questions that you've hopefully been asking yourself.
Isn't it hard, because many players used to play games which kind of have a really obvious storyline, and many players don't like that as well, but players don't like anything at all, that as well. Do you really think that gamers out there will kind of get your clues, because you have to work till you get those to that point where really you can kind of mark it as, oh, now I got this.
Sure.
Now I totally understand in which direction you guys back in Seattle are working on, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you absolutely want to make sure that it is not necessary for players to get those things if they want to enjoy the game. Like, you built the game with the idea that, if people sort of skip over that, totally fine. They should still have an enjoyable experience. But especially because Destiny is a place that, it's a vibrant world. We like to think of it as a place that's alive, where you keep wanting keep wanting to come back to it. Like, in order for that to be a pleasant experience, we believe there has to be some kind of layering of events that you will only see over time. And especially since we've started playing the game ourselves along with all the other millions of players, we've realized this even more. And if you look at the way we've built the Dreadnaught, which is our newest destination in the Taken King, you'll find that sort of fundamentally it is a little bit different from our previous destinations, in the sense that it very much caters towards that specific behavior of people coming back to it, and then us making sure that every single time to do that, there's new stuff for them to discover, right? So with the Dreadnaught, for example, you'll find that in the course of the campaign, you'll visit it a number of times, but then once you complete that and all of these other opportunities open themselves up, you find that even then, if you come back to it, there's a lot of hidden stuff there that was obscured from view initially, but slowly and gradually these secrets start to sort of present themselves to you, and that's very much a result of us figuring out, like, this is actually how people sort of want to play our game.
Must be really hard to kind of set the right bars to what things are achievable for those people who really would love to, who just earn those insights, right? Yeah. Must be really hard to set the right bar between, those dudes are more in the crucible, like the multiplayer part, and those guys, they really want to love to feel kind of the atmosphere, and as well the thing that actually specifically you do and work on by building those things. So you said, you talked about the Dreadnaught, right? Which is this huge thing from outer space, which is going to attack something, right? And when I first saw the trailer, there were two things coming up straightly in my mind. The first thing was Star Trek, the Borg, the first thing, and the second one was Event Horizon. You know the horror film, all right? And then I found, while researching about you, what you do and stuff like that, I found this one, and this reminded me again on the Event Horizon, right? On the spaceship, and this is really nitty gritty, really dark, really horror. This is not horror at all, but you actually built this thing to show it to your colleagues as well, right? So this is really pre-work. Actually, and you built this for yourself and Max, or
this is it's just a rough 3D model.
All right. So is it for you? The first question on that is, how do you get inspired by watching movies? By how do you work on that, right?
Yeah, it can be a number of things. I mean, it can be anything from movies to like other games or or books for that matter. I like to think that the sort of, as you go through life, the best thing is to be inspired by any number of things, and it can be anything as sort of a random encounter with a person on the street, right? Like the point is always to have an open mind and to be ready for like that just arbitrary moment where all of a sudden like things fall into place. In this specific case, actually, it was a little bit different. We were working on this space, and we had this idea of wanting this place to feel a little bit something like a blend between a laboratory and some kind of more cultish feeling space.
Okay.
And it was such an interesting paradox, I thought.
Do you use those words when you brainstorm about this, like kind of cultish, kind
a
of?
A little bit,
really.
Like that's very much sort of. It's actually a very prominent artistic pillar for Destiny to have those, seeming contradictions inspire some of the visuals, things that you might not initially be inclined to say, yes, those go in hand immediately, to actually sit down and think about, like, how could we actually make that work? How could we make such a peculiar combination work? So, it's coming up with something that looks like it has some sort of, like ritualistic quality maybe, and at the same time it also looks like a scientific experiment to a certain degree.
Kind of tactile as well. So I think everything needs to have everything seems to be senseful, right? So you really see details on that. It's moving a little bit. You got kind of
that's when sort of your engineering nerd takes hold.
Oh yeah, you're from industry design. That's the thing.
Like, what would this actually take to make this work? Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Another example of what I'd love to show you guys is this. This is from the Black Garden, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is kind of the direct opposite. This is not industrial at all. It's more organic.
Yeah,
all right.
Totally. Yeah.
So, and again, you used this one, so you sat down and made up your mind, I guess, right? Yeah. And you used this to show your colleagues, all right, maybe we should go into that direction.
Yeah.
And in the video description of this YouTube video, you said, and thankfully, it's kind of worked out.
Yeah.
So, and would you like to talk about that? So, how long does it take to build something up like this?
Well, I mean, for us, it's really easy. This was built in Max as well, and like I said before, as concept artists, we're completely free of any limitation whatsoever. Like, we can basically make things as sort of resource intensive as we want, because ultimately the only thing that sort of our colleagues have to take away from this work is the idea and nothing else. I mean, if there's assets to work with in terms of 3D geometry, fine, but the most important thing is always to prove a certain idea or prove the value of a certain idea, especially with things that are effects heavy, like this particular example, the Heart of the Black Garden. That always needs to be sort of proven again within the game environment. Yeah. And in this particular case, it was really interesting because we worked very closely with the guys that actually sort of built it in the game world, and did an amazing job of recreating that. Yeah. And it was an interesting thing. It was one of the most prominent visualizations of the darkness that we had in our game, and we were very careful not to give too much detail away, so we wanted it to have some degree of nebulousness to it. And striking that right tone is a lot. It requires a lot of iteration and a lot of balancing, all of which has to happen in the engine. Yeah. That was fun. It was a fun project to work on for sure,
I guess. So there was one question from our community to you: how is the kind of proportion, the ratio from your ideas as a lead concept artist, or if you're team, to actually the product that people can play? Can you kind of give us some not numbers, but is it more like, okay, we have this idea and this is and like 20% of your idea really kind of comes into the game? Is there kind of can you tell us something about the ratio?
That's really hard to say, especially because a lot of the ideas sort of tend to change a lot over time.
Okay.
Like I said before, the way in which we work, the way we communicate ideas sort of into the production process is always through imagery. However, like I said before, the most important thing is always for the experience to be fun. And very frequently what we find is that, hey, if we implement something in a certain way, it requires some kind of tweak and iteration later on to make sure that it actually
is fun.
Like one of the interesting things is always for PvP spaces, for example, is to make sure that you retain what we call the clean zone, which is essentially just all infrastructure at a high level needs to be very simple, so that player characters in the space stand out a little bit better than they would otherwise, is because that's the thing you're going to be shooting at. Those are the targets you want to be able to read very clearly. So things like vegetation at eye level is something that we typically try to avoid it. There's absolutely examples of it in the game, but things like that are examples of things we're conscious of when we build these spaces, and it's almost impossible to anticipate all of those within concept, because the ultimately what is going to allow us to tweak and optimize that is just playtesting.
I guess
putting the stuff into the game, playing it and playing it and playing it again and again and again until you're really like, okay, now it is a smooth experience, and now it's slowly getting to the point where we want it to be, and that is it's very hard to do in just concepts, right? Like that.
I guess.
That really requires you to have hands-on interaction with the actual game environment.
Nice. There was another question which fits directly. Has there ever been one thing you really wanted to be in the game, but other colleagues said no? Jesse, this is a bit too more HR guy or something. I don't know what the arguments could be to Has there any that would be cool if you just if there is something and you can talk about that.
Obviously, as with many of these things, it doesn't happen that often, thankfully, where we'll get an outright no to something that we pitch.
Yeah.
In the very few cases that has happened, I've always made sure that things are postponed rather than cancelled. Right.
Right.
Like, that's a very important distinction. No, actually, but in all seriousness, I actually think the interesting thing is never to. The interesting thing is always to see if you can get the spirit of the idea inside the game, right? And obviously there are easy and hard ways to do certain things, and certain things will simply be impossible if you insist on doing them in a certain way. So I think the interesting thing about game development is not necessarily, just making sure that no matter the cost, a certain idea makes it into the game. It's always like, okay, so I'm excited about this idea. Why am I excited about this idea? And what can I do to make sure that we take advantage of the thing that's fun about it? And almost always you find that if you're really, think critically about why you're excited about a certain thing you want to see in the game, that there is a way to get it in anyway, right?
All right.
It's very rarely that you really say like, okay, this is actually impossible to do. No, usually like there are ways to do that.
All
and
right. Can you give it maybe, if that's cool for you, a specific example from the thing we could have played already, right? So from the first phase of Destiny. So has there been one thing that was kind of hard for you to get the approval for, but you managed to get the approval for it? Was there anything?
Well, I mean, like the example you just brought up, the heart of the Black Garden, for example. Right. When we initially started talking about it, it's smoking and there's light coming off of it. When we first started working on it, we immediately ran into sorts of all kinds of complications when we applied all of those effects. Yeah. And we decided, okay, let's not have it move as prominently, and let's not have it smoke and everything. And we were kind of sort of satisfied with the results of that. But then this always happens somehow. Those tech artists, these crazy guys, they sit down and they crunch the numbers and they're like, wait a minute, there's actually a way we can do this. And then the thing is always happens. At some point you come into the office in the morning and it's like, you know what, it actually does exactly what we were talking about we couldn't do yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, and those are the exciting moments. And that actually happens very frequently, which is awesome. Right?
Yeah, I guess.
That's a super sort of pleasant feeling whenever that happens.
All right. So, but from your personal perspective, I mean, you moved to Seattle in 2011. That's right.
Yeah.
So 4 years ago. So, and you come from an industrial design background, so you can talk and you can think numbers, right? So this is your job as well. But mainly, you create something like this. So this is the tower, and as you can see, this is more like the tech scratch out of it, right?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but while working on Destiny, while working as a lead concept artist, have you gained more code, more numbers for yourself, for you personally, that the ideas that you personally create on visualization fits more to the tech guys, to the geniuses behind the numbers? Is it evolving for you personally that you?
I actually try to sort of not have too sort of. I actually try to stay away from the actual inner workings of the engine, because I want to sort of keep an open mind and not necessarily fall into the trap of thinking, well, that's probably easier to do than that.
Yeah.
I do, I do work very closely with the guys that are able to give me very specific answers to, like, okay, so we're talking lights in this space. How many lights can we have? Can we have 10 or can we have 12, right? At some point, that becomes really important.
I guess, in terms of performance and all that stuff, right?
Exactly, yeah. And, very often those numbers are going to be very impactful and have a large impact on the thing you're trying to do. But I think certainly initially it is very important that us as concept artists keep an open mind and not worry too much about, hey, this is really hard to do. It's because that's how we believe you push the envelope, right? You think outside the box and you come up with ideas that are unproven to a certain degree and see if they can lead you to new experiences and new fun things to do.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Nice. Interesting. So I guess sticking your nose into certain other crafts that maybe distracts you from the thing that you should do, right?
No, it's actually the opposite.
Right. Okay.
Sorry. It is actually super inspiring to be involved, to talk to a lot of those guys, because it's not always that in many cases constraints will actually inform certain in certain exciting things. It's if everything is possible always, it becomes really hard to
pick something.
To pick something, exactly. Yeah. So it is a little bit of both. Like on one hand, there's sort of the blue sky thinking, which you absolutely need. On the other hand, a good concept artist is also able to turn a constraint into something that makes something awesome. Yeah, it's a little bit of both, really.
Yeah. Kind of follow structures as well, right? Not just right.
Totally. Yeah.
So there was another question from the community, and it goes into the direction virtual reality. So this is the big thing, as we all know, actually. And now you create from scratch worlds that you can play as a player on certain platforms, and you can just walk around there. But then there is virtual reality, and with your background, with your kind of references by creating worlds. Destiny, virtual reality, something?
Well, we
you don't have to tell us secrets, but you can if you want to.
We have no announcements to make.
Damn it! Okay. No, but for you personally, and from your craftsmanship, virtual reality is really interesting, isn't it?
It is super exciting. Yeah, absolutely.
Is that? But and that was the question actually, because I think it was asked by a guy who is I guess is interested in this technique as well, right? The techniques. Is it that much different, because you are creating worlds in a 3D level, right? So you use the tools for that. But now thinking of virtual reality, is it that different from your work you're doing so far?
I think that certainly for video games. For a video game like Destiny, which is clearly sort of built on lessons that were learned over making console shooters over the last decade and a half or so, or even more, that's gotten to a point where when you look at sort of for example the weapon balancing in the Crucible, that is such a delicate ecosystem where the tiniest of like tweaks has a huge impact. I think it will be a little while before, VR gets to that same point. But we'll see. It's certainly a super exciting development, and I look forward to see what the future will look like in that respect. I'm sure it'll be exciting. Yeah.
There's something called The Void in Utah. Have you seen something about this?
No.
This is a virtual reality kind of something. You literally can walk through your spaces, and they did some tech things. And, the thing they did is really nice. It's neat, right? But more from a technical perspective.
Sure.
But my imagination combined with this, that could be heavily...
could be exciting, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Now your job is to talk about the Taken King, right? So the Taken King will take Destiny on another stage. This is what we can see over here.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something about the process of your work, of your team, creating, again, maybe a bit more in detail what this is and how hard was it for you to work on that? On the Dreadnaught for itself, right? Just the Dreadnought for, how long do you work on the Dreadnaught then?
Well, I mean, that's something that we've spent a lot of time working on. You know, it's it is always interesting to see like how, you know, those spaces tend to evolve as our understanding of our own game kind of, you know, evolves too. And with the Dreadnaught specifically, like I said before, what we really tried to do was make sure that unlike previously, the degree to which you discover its secrets is more spread out over time. Because we felt that was a better way to, it was a better fit for the way our game actually behaves over a longer period of time.
Okay.
And in that sense, I think it is a very good way for players to experience our new end game, if you will. And that was fun. That was certainly a lot of fun. It's always a challenge for us to think of like how can we come up with visuals that support that, right? And I don't obviously want to give away any secrets, but that is something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. Like, okay, so what does that actually mean, and how we're going to actually make sure that works that way. Yeah, so clearly we're pretty excited to see what players will say, you know, not just in the coming week, but like even after periods after that, like how that will behave, and if what we had in mind actually works the way it does. Obviously, as players ourselves, we are also looking forward to playing the new raid, of course, that we're all super excited about. We have sort of the ritual on every Tuesday where all of us go home like,
oh, really?
See you tonight. Yep, and that was good. We had a huge number of players that just finished their moments of triumph last week.
Really?
Just in time. Yeah. A lot of us had to do Skolas, and so yeah, we did that. That was
awesome. Really?
So
back in Seattle, really, you sat down there and you placed the first raid for yourself, and then
we play these activities constantly. But you know,
I guess you have to do it, right?
Especially now, and we're all looking forward to doing that. So that'll be awesome.
Right. Okay, Jesse, it's been a blast. Thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Last question: what's coming up after the Taken King? Can you know?
Well, I mean, exciting things. Obviously, I'll make the formal claim of like we have no announcements to make, but clearly, like our intent was always to build this as a living world and to make sure that you know it was in a constant state of change, and so. That's something that we're obviously hard at work at, and when the time comes, we'll announce things that players will hopefully find exciting.
Oh, yes. So I think we all can be pretty sure that, Jesse, when you're going back to Seattle, right, there's something waiting for you.
Absolutely.
The next thingy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And we all have to guess and wait and just play the next big thing, which is called the Taken King, right?
Yep.
And to see your work and to see the work of all of you back in Seattle, right?
Yep.
So thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much.
Impressive, and everyone check just the website jessevandijkart.com. This is this is your website, and as well to feel what you guys doing. Play the game. That's just that simple, right? But you have to be far better than just a level 22 warlock, not able to do shit because it's too weak to do shit. Jesse, thank you very much, man.
Awesome, thank you for having me.
Bye bye.